and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today is Thursday, August 25th, year of our Lord 2016, and you're listening to a Gen Pop Media production. My name's Howard.
Oh, wait, we're going to drop the Gen Pop Media stuff.
Okay. Strike that.
Just for now, because...
Strike that.
How many... We've been building this website for a long time. Let's just call it...
A Dave Pop.
What happens when you go to that website, by the way?
It sends them to our YouTube page.
Oh, it does? Oh, then, yeah, it is a Gen Pop Media production. I stand corrected.
So, anyway, like I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, you're listening to a Gen Pop Media production. I'm Howard. I'm joined by the whole crew at 6 o'clock today.
On time, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
Just want to point out, for those keeping score, Kat was the last one in today, which blew my mind.
I would have been here first, but he cut me off
I
in the
knew
gas
it.
station
I knew
parking
Cut you
lot.
off.
I know. We figured you were driving together.
It's aggressive,
Like,
man.
you actually left the gas station. You go, I'm leaving now because I don't want to be late. You still got here last.
Well, that's because you
But I
drive
was not
600 miles an hour
Driving
everywhere.
600 miles an hour for 100 feet is not going to save you that much time.
Or is it possible, by the way?
Another great question.
Right.
Don't bring reality into this.
Sorry,
That's not
math
what this
is,
show,
you
that's not
know.
what this is about. So what's up, guys? How you doing today? How is everyone?
Oh, it does go to our... Well, it does. Howard?
He's like shocked.
Well, always
Holy cow, some
Boy,
behind the scenes is
this
working.
is the well-oiled machine. He's like,
Holy
it
smokes.
does go. It does.
Howard
It's awesome.
actually did what I asked him to 6 months ago. and I
No,
just
no.
haven't
It wasn't
checked.
it wasn't from that angle. It was from a different angle than that. Whatever other... let's move on. Anyway.
Everybody's good? I'm good. You're good?
Kat, how are you,
Kat's good.
Catherine?
I'm good.
Do you have coffee?
I do.
I'm so jealous.
I wish
No, it's fine. Don't even...
Isn't
yeah.
it weird that while Dave was buying you cigarettes, you were just getting yourself?
Oh, that's not fair.
Oh, man.
Well,
Dirty,
I thought
dirty,
actually
dirty.
he was going
Get
to
two
criticize me
straws.
for drinking coffee when it's 87 degrees.
No, actually, I
so
love
I really
coffee.
wasn't thinking of coffee for
It
everybody.
is never too warm for coffee.
I like coffee all the time. I'm
Yeah.
kind of a junkie.
Same here.
Yeah.
I can drink coffee while I'm falling asleep.
I can drink it cold.
It actually...
It has
It
no
puts me
effect.
to
It has no
actually.
effect
And
on
if
me.
you drink enough caffeine, it actually begins to. It
Makes
has.
sense.
It goes beyond the law of diminishing returns and goes into the law of negative returns. So, nonetheless, though, those first 3 cups every day are
That's what I'm
big.
talking about.
One of the many addictions.
It's got to
life.
happen. If I don't have coffee, I'm a disaster.
Yeah, you don't even want to deal with me if I don't have coffee.
This is the first cup I've had. So.
Really? Oh, every morning. It's got to happen.
No. First thing I do after I peel the covers off myself.
It's like right on the nightstand.
You walk. I walk out the door and go to Tim Hortons because I have to support Tim Hortons because
Yeah.
I have so many friends that rely on my coffee to make their living.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is you buy coffee in bulk from.
Yeah.
Are we really talking about coffee?
Yeah.
Coffee's good.
How's
Gotta be
your foundation? Oh, sorry.
Got to be a conspiracy in there somewhere, right?
No, I actually think there's no conspiracies. Coffee's just
Thank
a
God.
thing.
It's good old-fashioned capitalism, baby.
There
It's
is
fine.
one. There is one.
Supply and demand. We want it.
Is
they
there a
make it.
coffee conspiracy?
One
out there?
I don't think
sacred.
so.
One sacred thing. Coffee.
Yeah.
I think wine is the same. There's no conspiracies.
No, wine is also good.
Yeah, not
And
bad.
so is beer and whiskey.
And
Some
I believe-
vodka.
And I think we're going to be having some in 2 hours.
Several types
Not
of
that we're
tequila.
drunkards, but we're not afraid to have a cocktail after work. I kind of
No.
like our little Thursday night
I'm-
wine downs.
I'm into it.
It's good,
It's
without a
fine.
doubt. How's
We gotta
the...
start taping them. There's almost better stuff going on.
That's maybe we should think about
after
that.
the show than there is during the show.
We should really think hard about that. The foundation is...
the DCD Foundation.
we
How
had
are
a
we doing?
really successful private fundraiser, right, last weekend. And we are now up to about $3,000, dude.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
so...
2 weeks. We're good work.
Yeah, so we have...
Is it
I
a
got
coincidence that you pulled up in a new black Porsche in the parking lot?
I inherited that, so... No, I don't have a black Porsche.
Better
no.
check where your money's
Yeah,
going with
I
this
have
foundation, people.
I got a Ford, so...
Yeah,
Got
he's a
me
local. He's a
forward.
Detroit boy.
Yeah, but anyway, it's going... it's good. Now it's my turn to do some work. We got to do some legal stuff and bank stuff, and it's good, man. So far, it's... In my eyes, it's a total success, so...
It is.
Yeah, it's.
I'm
it's
excited about it.
The response from people has been awesome. Really awesome.
But
so.
it can always be better. So if you want to make it better and do your part, just go to thedcdfoundation.org.
Yes.
And you can read what we're all about and see what we're trying to do. And most importantly, there are several places for you to press a button and send us money.
Yeah, if you want to donate, that's right now. I mean, that is... You hate to sound like that, right? But, I mean, that right now, that's the most important thing that people can do to help is...
Absolutely.
Put some money in there. So, unfortunately, the reality of the world is you can't do anything really without money. So...
Or a gun. But
well, I mean, yeah, we're trying to, do it the right way.
We want
So
to sell, not strong arm.
yeah, but I mean that would help out more than anything. And the money, I'm an honest guy. It's going to go exactly
I can
to
vouch for that. This is
it's going to go right where it needs to go. So,
yeah, I would rather trust someone like that than, like, say, UNICEF, where I don't know if this is true for UNICEF, but I just heard this for those large conglomerate charities. Where at the end of the day, you've only got 5 or 10 cents of all donations.
Well, that's why they call it the March of Dimes.
Yeah, that's actually a fact.
Literally 10 cents out of every dollar goes to the kids.
Yeah, and I mean some of
90
that
cents goes for administration.
Some of that, I mean, that to me is, I mean, I don't want to judge, but I know the concept of overhead. There is cost involved, but 90%. Somebody's probably making too much money on their salary. Again, that could be unfair. I don't know.
Does that mean that you guys think that the Clinton Foundation really isn't spreading those billions out they're getting?
Yeah,
they had to bring it up.
Has paid Hillary and
all
Bill.
those houses they built in Haiti and all that wonderful work they did down there, right?
Well, they have to have somewhere to house their slaves.
No,
I mean,
their supplies never got to the
and
Haitians.
hide Bill's former conquest.
Yeah,
right?
well, anyone wants to look into something truly evil.
Clinton cash.
Look into
Go
that.
there.
Clinton cash.
Look
exactly.
into it. Is
unbelievable.
Disgusting.
I mean, in there, I think it was in there where it came out that over the last few years, the Clintons, out of this charitable foundation, have paid themselves $18 million.
Well, they have earned.
You guys think about that.
Well, since they, exited the White House, they've earned over $200 million.
I have no
doing
problem.
nothing.
I will say this: books have been written, speeches. Are
Okay,
given.
some of them, yeah, but the speeches.
However, the speeches are a little shady because the foundation works out a deal with the State Department.
Quid pro quo, dude. It's
and then all of a
ridiculous.
sudden, Bill's getting $750,000
to make an
talk for an
appearance.
hour.
Exactly. That's.
I mean, that's just crazy. They could have you for $500,000, and you're way more interested.
No, they're buying access.
If you are going to be the head of a charitable foundation, unfortunately, you are, if for no other reason than for marketing purposes and just the appearance of integrity, you need to sort of cap you can't be pulling down $500,000 a year if you're doing it. Something's wrong.
Well, you certainly can't be involved in politics or legislation.
Well, I wouldn't say. I just don't think you should use politics or your position in the government to profit or
to fund your
yeah,
to mention your. I mean, if you're a political figure and you're a name, I would hope that you would set up some foundation, turn it over to someone that can run it professionally, get your hands out of the till.
Right, because it's illegal to do that.
Well,
so.
unless you're running for president, then essentially.
But don't worry,
then
if she
you-
gets
then you can kill
Don't
people
worry.
and it's no big deal.
Don't worry, if she gets elected, they will no longer take donations from foreign entities. I guess it's okay when you're not the president and some other really powerful politician, but
She was
just rest that.
She was
just
only
rest it
Secretary
there.
of State, so it was a nothing.
So
it was
it's
a
okay.
Title-only job.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They don't do anything.
Yeah. Secretary.
Anyway, look into that. That Clinton cash
Was
is
it?
eye-opening.
Were you the guys that were telling me? I either read this, heard this. I don't know how this information got into my head. So maybe it was one of you guys that the
now we're talking. Turn
plan
to cool
inside
jazz.
the Obama camp. And when I say Obama camp, what I really should say is the forces behind the New World Order. Let's say it's impossible to vet this. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying this is true, but somewhere I heard that the plan was, in order to allow Obama to stay in the presidency, Hillary would need to win the presidential election, and between the election, which is in like November 12th, 13th, I believe, something like that, early-ish, middle November, and the inauguration, which is January, is 2 months later, that she would be brought up on murder charges. Did you guys?
Oh no, but I
with
mean
that she would lose her.
Why would Obama get it?
Well, at that point, we don't have an elected president,
Right.
And
Why wouldn't her vice president get it?
no, because she's not inaugurated yet.
Yeah, good
So
point.
he
No,
would stay.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's how that would
And
go.
I do know that several laws affecting that very scenario have been changed rather drastically through executive orders of his and the NDAA, which everyone should look into, just in the last 18 months, 24 months. So, and
Now, there's something fishy going on with this whole thing,
I think we're going to have
for sure.
an incredibly, maybe exciting is not the right word, but eventful
It depends.
4 or 5
know.
months. I've never been more into an election probably in my life. The Ross Perot,
Yeah, I was real into Ross Perot.
92, that one I was into.
I don't know. It's sad.
And since then, we're about to bookend the Clintons. The Bushes and the Clintons will have essentially run this country for the last 24 years, 30 years.
Well, that's not dangerous.
And we're doing well. Just ask any
Yeah,
liberal.
no, it's
Ask
actually
any
things
liberal.
are
We're doing
really
great.
good. Yeah, I mean it's
We're doing good things out there.
and all they got to do is raise taxes again. We'll be doing
Yeah.
better. So
Well, I
anyway,
think they're going to concentrate on the economy in the next 25 years.
Oh, are they?
Because they got the whole bathroom rights thing worked out in this administration. So
that's right.
they're trying to
Thank-
prioritize.
Well, thank God for
they're
that.
trying to prioritize.
It's really confusing which bathroom to use.
All right, you cynics.
It turns out there is a coffee conspiracy.
Oh, of course there is.
Oh,
It is?
my.
Now she does research.
I mean, it is a
Sorry,
drug,
what's the
right?
coffee
So-
conspiracy?
That some companies are somehow depleting the beans of caffeine, so you have to buy more. So you have to
Well,
buy
why-
more.
yeah, why
that's
not?
That's called business.
get
Yeah,
wired.
that's not a
Business.
conspiracy. I'm sure they just do it.
But it's tied
So
into
that's where they get all the caffeine for
No,
the energy drinks.
but
They
you
suck it
guys,
out of the coffee.
It's tied in. Like this is going on in the Caribbean, where Hillary Clinton and
Of course
see?
it is.
So it's part of the Clinton.
Of-
See how I did
of
that?
course
Full
it is.
connection.
Wow.
Bam.
Wow.
Right there. Hillary Clinton coffee conspiracy.
Sooner or later,
at 11.
it will be the 3 degrees of Hillary Clinton, or the 3 degrees of the Clinton Foundation, rather than of Kevin Bacon,
All I gotta say is God
because
help
they've
us
got
all.
they've got their slimy tendrils everywhere.
God help us all.
All right,
He's
let's
the
get.
only one who can.
That is true. There's no human that can fix this situation anymore. And if you don't understand what we mean by this is an unfixable situation, you are, by definition, in a coma, and you need to wake up. And I'm done apologizing to people that are brainwashed, and that's literally what they are. And here's a few hints. You'll know if you're brainwashed by certain words and your reaction to them. If someone says the word alien to you, do you immediately dismiss what they're saying? If you do, understand you are brainwashed. There's a preconditioned reaction that has been instilled in you. There are other words that do that. It's I don't want to get off subject, but I'm losing my patience with folks like that.
I hear you, man.
The one, not a new one that's new to the information and they've just never known, because we were all there at one point. But the people that have been shown this,
And they're still walking away.
and they're still essentially turning their back on the truth. Whew. You got a lot more to worry about than, what government or what manager is going to be in place of this world if you're doing that, because that's one of the signs of someone that is
you're
not
just
going
you're
down
just
the right
doomed.
path.
If you can't accept open and honest debate on anything, if your mind is that closed, you're screwed. You're screwed because
Or
you're
that fearful to be in the
Yeah.
minority. I mean, if you're that much of a sheep, I guarantee you at least one of the people that are your shepherds, that are hurting you, is going to lead you off a cliff. And you only need, you probably have, you don't realize it, 20 or
there are
30
probably several.
shepherds in your life.
Yeah.
And the way this works is if you're following just one of them that leads you off a cliff, you're effed.
Yeah, pretty much it only takes one cliff.
Yeah, it's one of the things.
Right, you're not really going to have a second try at that one.
What I'm saying, we all follow people. Some people follow Anthony Robbins or Stephen Covey. Some people follow Chuck Missler. Or they follow their local priest at the Catholic Church. And you can have more than one, if you understand. But and I think this is why, when I say God or the Bible, it's all coming from the same source. Maybe it was written by a different person in a different language at a different time, but in too many places, God goes out of his way to say, and I used to think this was unfair. I'm like, this is mean. Like if you're in a church where they're not preaching the truth or they're shielding you from part of it, and that ends up costing you, because of that, you make some mistakes or do some things that, because there are some things that we do or do not do that can disqualify us from heaven. And if you're following a human person that is misrepresenting, whether it's on purpose or even from their own perspective with good intentions, if you follow that path, you're in trouble. And
you're flirting with disaster.
I think that's God's way, and I think that's, at the end of the day, that's one reason why we say, don't even trust us. We get some things wrong, and we've also said before, we're learning this as we go, and we're just talking about our experiences as we learn. Now, between the four of us, you've got thousands and thousands of hours in science and in the Bible cumulatively. But at the end of the day, if you can't accept the truth of Jesus just by someone telling you, which I didn't at first either. Then you go to the second phase, which is, if you don't go that far, at least read that book for yourself and try and understand the whole story and the message. Because if you leave that to someone else, I guarantee you the forces we're up against, they have contaminated so much that the odds of you dodging all of those bullets in a lifetime is almost impossible, maybe even impossible. At the end of the day, I think what God was saying is, you got to read this book for yourself.
Right.
If you're not reading,
I think it's part of the American condition that we'd all rather be doing something other than work. So it's like, instead of reading the Bible and deciphering the words for ourselves, it's just easier if we just have someone else tell us what they mean, so we can get back to American Idol.
At some point, though,
but the whole idea is you find a church or you find a group for fellowship and to discuss the word of the Lord with your peers. Maybe you find a mentor. Maybe you make friends. Maybe you're just surrounded by other Christians and it's good. But the whole idea is for you to create your own relationship with God.
Yeah, at the end of the day, those are how I juxtapose. I have ongoing experience with two churches right now in my life. One is the Catholic Church because of my mother, and the other is the Bethlehem Church, which is a Baptist church in Belleville. And the biggest philosophical difference between those two churches is, in the Catholic Church, you need to listen to the instructions of a human and the organization behind that human, i.e. the Vatican and the Catholic hierarchy. The Baptist, and no one brings their Bibles to Catholic Church. No. The Bible was a mystery. I went to Catholic Church every single week growing up, but there's no growth there. It's just a matter of a memorized ritual that loses all meaning after a certain number of times through it. It's the same story for almost every Catholic I run into. And this concept of actually bringing a Bible to church and learning what God's words
reading along during the sermon?
Really? Even in some places very close to my inner circle here, there are people that they're Christian, but they're so brainwashed. They're actually under the impression that it's bad to bring a Bible to church.
That's rude. That's just rude, reading the Bible in church.
But I am a fan, and that's one reason I like. Is it Bethlehem Bible Church?
Bethlehem Baptist.
Bethlehem Baptist Church in Belleville, Michigan.
Yep.
If you guys are looking for a place to go where you're going to be greeted with warm arms, open-minded, friendly, loving people that actually talk about what's in the book.
Yeah.
Good and bad. I mean, we all have perspectives
There's
on
good
how
and bad
much.
and everything.
Man, we disagree too sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
Exactly. But at least there's a discussion so that your own personal feelings, which may be fueled by this entity called the Holy Spirit that makes you feel certain ways about things, which I believe is now very true. He has a way of communicating with us. That's written throughout this book, without a doubt. And this book it would not hold very much sway with me if I had not found for myself the fact that it accurately, now, if you don't agree with this, and I didn't for a while, it's because you're deceived and you just haven't, believe me, but after 6 years and doing this full-time as a job, that book is the true account of our history. And it also did something no other book in history has ever done, and that is, without error, predict the future. And predict unbelievable things. Not just a few.
Hundreds.
There are 2,000 predictions in that book. And understand that 1,500 of them have already occurred. There are about 500 that are, the abomination of desolation, for instance, the tribulation. These things have not happened. But here again, all the signs that were discussed of what will be going on in the world are absolutely in play. I mean, hundreds of years before the Greeks were even a nation. In fact, Kat, I think we were looking at this yesterday. It predicted the rise of Alexander the Great. It also predicted that he'd come, to the brink of world domination, and that kingdom would then be broken up into 4 smaller kingdoms. That came to pass hundreds of years later. It predicted the exact day some guy named Jesus would be riding a donkey into Bethlehem after having been born, or riding a donkey into Jerusalem after having been born in the state of Nazareth in the city of Bethlehem. Predicted to the day, predicted the reformation of the state of Israel. And not just that, but a million little details surrounding it. And if we understood the book of Daniel, which we were looking at yesterday, I don't want to talk about this because it's not, but it also predicted in 1798 when the Vatican lost its stranglehold of power, because in that same prediction where the Bible, and this is out of the book of Daniel, talks about, Daniel was written it was written by Daniel. He says it himself, and Jesus, if you believe Jesus was a real figure and that he was recorded properly, he himself said the book was written by Daniel, the prophet, who was a Jewish kid when he was taken by the Babylonians in the first dispersion of Israel, and this would have been 800 BC?
608 BC, I think.
So the first thing he writes is the Babylonian Empire. It's kind of like some people are like, oh, America's ever going to go down? I'm like, well, actually. If they'd had the same foresight the Babylonians had, because they're in control of the world at the time. So the first one he writes is, the Babylonian Empire is going to fall. The Greeks will rise. Then the Greeks will break up. Then the Romans will rise. And this is where, and after Jesus Christ show up, Rome will go hidden. And that's been a big mystery. Whatever happened to Rome? It wasn't attacked. It wasn't overrun. I mean, where did it go? It just quietly morphed into the Vatican Church. It morphed into what is now the Catholic Church. And from there, all of the offspring of those emperors, those Caesars, they are now the dukes and the duchesses and the kings and the queens of the European Union. And that is your hidden Rome, too. And it's, in fact, Britain exiting, that's a big curveball.
Yeah, that's huge.
But the prophecy's still in place. Out of that kingdom is going to come this, this last kingdom on earth, which is, Daniel uses some metaphors, which are deciphered in other books. That's why this whole book is one authenticated messaging system. But the future of the world was predicted before it happened, plain and simple, including this upcoming deception, which is going to fool more people than anything. And the reason for all of this deception and everything, it's gonna go right into the topic we're gonna continue on from last week, because we were talking about what do we know about heaven and hell.
Right.
At the end of the day, this is definitely an emotional topic, because actually, if you're brainwashed, those are two words right now where you may have certain images in your head of what hell is or what it's not. Or some people just get upset when you mention things like Jesus, hell, Satan, God. Now think about that. If I mention Santa and Easter Bunny, does anyone get upset?
No.
Why? But if they're as mythical as why would you get upset about Jesus or Satan? Do you understand?
Right. If they're not, if Jesus isn't real and the Easter, why would you even care? Like, why would you be so moved by that?
If you are moved by that, negatively or positively, understand that is a manifestation of the spiritual war we were born into. And there are no two ways about it. It is not, you do not have that opinion because you're intelligent, or you were born into the right family that had the right religion, or you've watched the right TV. Understand that you are a soldier in this spiritual war, not just a soldier, but you're also the prize in it. Because what is all this deception geared towards? It's geared towards getting humanity, which Satan hates, because we were the red-headed stepchild. Satan was number one to God. All of a sudden, he creates a race in his own image. Because if you think of all the entities that are described in heaven, and to say angels is like saying insects. There's so many different kinds. There's bugs, there's ants, there's spiders, and inside of them there are different types. And there are many different types of angels. There are levels, there are authorities, there are dominions, there are powers. Those are actually ranks of angels. And inside of them you've got different breeds. You've got seraphim and cherubim. So understand this. The whole point for all of this deception, for all of it, is to create so much confusion that we disqualify ourselves so that we ultimately end up in the kingdom of someone that wants to, that hates us, literally hates us. And for me, once I realized that this book was real and the information in here was real, and like I said, it took a while, because you don't just go from believing evolution to suddenly, when you have to actually go in and study a little biology and some genetics and some DNA and maybe understand something about computer programming and understand about statistics and randomness. And you take little pieces of all of these different fields, and then you start to realize, oh my gosh, we really were created. I mean, it's impossible for us to have evolved. Microevolution, yes, that happens. It shouldn't even have the word evolution. That's just call it geographic adjustment.
Like adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. But a banana will never turn into a monkey. And a monkey will never turn into a human. It's just... And had that happened, we would have, even Darwin himself said, we would have found the skeletons of all of these. It's not one missing link. If we all see that chart of humanity going from monkey to grown man.
And where are they?
But the real chart, in essence, has millions of mutations between that monkey and the man, and we should find the earth littered with the skeletons and bones of all of the transformational and transitional creatures between monkey and man, but we don't. I mean, we don't. We have a finite set. Everyone falls into an existing category.
You think the Smithsonian's getting involved in that too?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are many different ways you can tell that Smithsonian is involved. Number one is the archaeologists. These are good guys. They study archaeology. They go out. They do a dig. They're looking for ancient ruins of a city that is supposed to be somewhere around here. They run across a tomb of skeletons that all have, they're 20, 30 feet tall. Yeah, hard to believe, but there again, if you're just scoffing at it, understand that's the brainwashing of our spiritual war at work. Same story, and there's just too many of these guys that all have the same story. I mean, what's the first thing you do when you find what you think is the most incredible find of all time?
You go tell
you announce it.
You call a newspaper, and you call your museum, you call your professor that you studied under, okay? And very quickly, the press, because we know who controls that, the people that praise Lucifer control the press, so that story gets shut down, or it just makes a little byline buried somewhere in the back. Then you call the Smithsonian. Then their first phone call is to the U.S. military. Literally, almost always the U.S. military, even on foreign soil. Maybe that's why we've got soldiers stationed all around the world. Now you get military guys echoing the exact same thing these archaeologists said, like, oh, yeah, dude, these skeletons were 30 feet long. There were like 20 of them. It's not like there was one freak tall guy. This was a race of giants. And next thing you know, the military cordons off the area. They take the evidence. They tell the archaeologists, we're going to shift this safely to the Smithsonian, or there's a few museums that are players in this, Natural History Museum in Chicago. And the next thing you know, the bones are lost. And every archaeologist, I've probably studied, realistically I've said hundreds, but I'll bet you it's not 100, but it's close to it. Very similar story. And changed their life, because that's how they woke up to the reality of the world. And now a lot of them go around telling their story of, I was an archaeologist. But the evidence is still there. You can still see human footprints that are, feet that are 4 feet long, embedded in rock that was once molten lava or that was once mud. And you've just got to have your head buried in the sand. It's just got to be buried in the sand if you keep ignoring this stuff, because it's real, and it so is in play with the deception that is coming. Also a prediction, unfulfilled one, but it is coming. At the end of the day, the reason this is important, and I don't want to speak for you guys, so pipe in if you have a different opinion. No one is up here talking about the Bible and God and Jesus. We're not self-righteous. We are self-admitted. I mean, we party, we swear, we've committed every sin under, you can name. We're not trying to be better than anybody. In fact, along the way, you realize how lame of a species we really are. I mean, we are, and not only that, but this generation of our species is easily
the worst,
the dumbest human generation that has ever existed, who believe themselves to actually be enlightened,
right?
Because someone else invented an iPhone and some apps somewhere. But we are the dumbest people believing absolute garbage. Which again, where do we learn this stuff? Well, we already know who controls the media. Well, who controls our school system? Oh, the same families that praise Lucifer established our... if you're going to try and sell Satan instead of Jesus, you don't come out in 1905 and just go, oh, Satan really is God and Satan's good. You got to do it slowly. You do it inch by inch. Go read what some of those textbooks were in the 1900s compared to today. We're just dumb. We're lost. We're way off course, more so than I think ever in history. But the point I'm getting to is this. We all came to this understanding that our souls are eternal. Heaven and hell are real places. And we are going to one of those two. God authenticated his message to humanity by writing a book that is mathematically impossible. On many, many levels. Not just through Bible codes or whatever. There's many, many ways to authenticate the Bible. And in there, put it this way. If I'm on a ship that's sinking, and the captain says, guys, we should go to the front of the boat and get on those lifeboats because the guys that are sinking the ship, I saw them sabotaging the lifeboats in the back. Come with me to the front. Now, if you just don't want to believe the captain and go to the back, he's not a bad or evil captain, but he does know that, all right, your boat's going to sink and sharks are going to just chew you guys up into little pieces. But do whatever you want. I'm not putting a gun to your head. It's a free boat. But here's how you save yourself. And there are so many. We have been conditioned to go to the lifeboats in the back, which are false lifeboats. That's my metaphor of the day. Point is,
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I like it.
if heaven and hell are real, there is no more important thing to do ever in the world. Yes, we all have to earn income, and we've got children to raise, and we've got appearances to be kept in our neighborhood. There's a lot of roles we play in this world. But I can't imagine, once you understand how real these places are, what could possibly be ever get ranked above that. Nothing. Nothing. Because our existence here is anyone that's 30 years old or
Well,
older,
it's even-
they get it. Like, oh my gosh, my first 30 years went by like that. And another 30, I'm now in my 60s.
Yeah.
It's even more important if you have chosen to raise children, because you're not only responsible for you, you're responsible for them. If you're married, if you have children, you're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You're responsible for your family. And you can take feminism, women's rights, wherever you want to go, but in a traditional family, there is a leader. And in most of our families, it happens to be us. So I'm not saying a man leads every family, but every family has a leader, and it's the leader of the family's obligation to lead that family in the right direction. My family happens to be me, so
You think so?
well,
Girly, he's been smoking pot
You
out back.
think
Right,
so, but-
we know who's really in control. No, I'm just
she
teasing,
lets
just
me
teasing.
do the spiritual leading. Okay, she does everything.
Well, it is true. I mean, that's one of the, it sounds like, I don't have the passage
No, that's
for it,
actually
but we're gonna
absolutely
get,
true.
We're going to get judged based on what
Yeah.
we, and that, I don't want to go into it on the show, but that had played a big role in you know, what happened with my ex and I. And I was trying to teach the kids that, hey, Jesus is real. And not that was, you know, she didn't stop that, but it wasn't encouraged. It was a lot of sighs, a lot of like, oh, here we go again. And all I can do at this point, because, you know, with them, my hands are clean. I've done everything truly that I believe I can, is prayer. And I do believe that is powerful. God, and I can't believe I'm even saying these things, because I used to roll my eyes at, oh, let's get down and pray. I'm like, how about we get down and actually do something about it?
Yeah.
But that we'll save that one for another time. The point is, I promise you, the motivation, not just for us, but pretty much everyone that talks about heaven and hell, it's not for their own glory, and it is not for their own popularity. It's not for money. It's actually because somewhere deep down they care about their fellow man, and they understand what's at stake.
Well, I mean, the greatest commandment is to, you know, love your neighbor as yourself.
No,
Totally.
second greatest commandment.
Okay, second greatest.
What's
Sorry.
the greatest?
Love the Lord with all your
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with
I'm still new at that
were you
one.
going to say something, Dave?
No.
So with that said, we understand that this is, you know, it's a very tricky topic. It's hard to discuss it. I want more than ever to remind everyone before this show, do your own research on this. We've all got, there are 4 people that are on this show right now, and I guarantee you our 4 images of heaven and hell between us don't agree. We're in the right ballpark, but we might not all be standing on the pitcher's mound. And in case, just look it up for yourself. You have access to the internet. It is, you no longer have to travel to Alexandria, Egypt, to go to the library there to read some scrolls. You now can actually, every work that has ever been done in the history of mankind, you are 10 seconds away from it. It's the greatest library in history. Which, by the way, was another prediction God made, that in the final days, knowledge would explode. And it has. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
people...
but with more knowledge than ever, we have people who are less knowledgeable.
Imagine that.
Well, I think the reason, you know, we keep talking about, we spent quite a bit of time talking about this, and it's in the Bible, in the book of Romans, it says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them." They're suppressing the truth. They know the truth,
Right.
but they're suppressing it. And I've said that to some of my friends that don't believe, and they're like, I'm not suppressing any truth. And I'm like, well, then what's true?
Yeah. What is
They can't
the
tell me
truth?
what's true, right? Because there's only one thing that can be true.
Right.
So, yes, you are. You're inadvertently doing it, but you're still doing it because you know that this could possibly be the one truth, you know?
The people that I know, this is one way to find God. There are some people I've come across, like I said, many archaeologists. If you take archaeology and natural history to the nth degree, you'll find God. If you take genetics and biology to the nth degree, you'll find God. If you take astronomy and physics to the nth degree, you'll find God. If you take conspiracy theories, which, again, if you formed an opinion by the word conspiracy, you're brainwashed. Because all we're really saying these are just deceptions.
Well, actually, conspiracy theory, the term in itself is their term to discredit what we're talking about. It's become the popular title of what people who are searching through the truth through secular and political activities like we do. It has become the mantra of what we do. But that's actually their label.
I've actually had some people that were friends of mine that would call me a conspiracy theorist in a derogatory way. It's like calling a black person the N-word or Hispanic person, I can say it because I'm Hispanic, a spick. And it sort of rolls off your back a little bit, but it says something about them. And when it's happened a couple times. And maybe I brought it on because in the early days I was, I think, way too spaz about trying to get the truth out. I ended up calming
kind of
down
a
and doing
conspiracy theory sniper.
Yeah, very much so. And sometimes people don't want to hear it, fair enough. And definitely found out you start doing some work like this show or make a movie or write something, and then they'll seek it out on their own. It's way more meaningful than if it's pounded down the throat. But we need both. We need both bombers and on the ground guys holding guns.
Feedback a little off topic. I got some great feedback on the movies you passed out at the fundraiser we did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I talked to several of the people that were there last night, and they watched the movie, and they were just like, "Wow!"
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, good.
Rob,
I don't know why I even thought of
Rob
it.
Arcilla?
Yeah.
Why I even thought of it? I was like, you know what? Just bring some DVDs if you got them laying around, just in case.
Yeah, great idea. It was the talk of the
very cool. That's what I was
after the
hoping would
prayer
happen.
meeting, yeah.
So
if I was more able
and Rob
to...
did not even skip to the part that me and Dave are in.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm kind of disappointed.
90 minutes of Hooper.
Wait,
I immediately would have gone for
the
me and
extras.
Oh, that's right, because we did
Yeah.
the Global Master Edition. So
Right.
the movie was The Anatomy of a Great Deception. Thanks for the plug, because I never really...
That's agdmovie.com.
And where does that
Yeah.
website take you?
agdmovie.com.
Okay, good.
Right.
And as much as we'd like to sell some, and we just use the money from that for our next film, which is in development, and this show and stuff like that, it is free on YouTube. So
Yeah, you can.
you are not.
But all the bonus segments are not.
Are not on YouTube.
And there's some,
Yeah,
there's some
I will
of the best
s- yeah,
parts.
that's a good point.
Some of the best parts of the movie.
So you can see Howard and Dave on camera.
Yeah.
That studio is getting fixed up, by the way, but.
You got to get a booster seat.
At the end of the day, the truth is still the truth. Exactly. I'm getting some phone books for him to say. Only not.
It was the couch, not.
Yeah, he sat in
It's an
like
optical illusion.
Yeah. So all right, back to what we were saying.
Sorry.
Heaven and hell, the destiny of where you are going, not your skin suit, but where your thoughts, your memories, your feelings, your personality, who you are is going somewhere. This is the whole enchilada. This is it. This is the mystery of life. Figuring this out is you're now on the trail of the meaning of life. That is, and I personally have personal thoughts. God sends out a third of the angels. He's just lost a massive amount of population. And if you kind of do the numbers, because he talks about how many angels there were, 10,000 times 10,000 times 1,000, and then you do some rough math on how many people probably are saved. You're going off the research that has been done by other groups we talked about last week, which thinks somewhere in the vicinity of 7% of the population are actually listening to the captain. They're going to the lifeboats actually in the front, not the ones that are stocked with sleeping bags and candies where, everyone wants to go. They're going to the ones that work. So if you're listening to the captain, 7% are going to end up being saved. And you look at all throughout human history, those numbers come close to tying. Like it's a way of replenishing heaven's population because they don't. I don't think you can have babies up there. I don't think angels can get it going.
No, they can't.
In the spirit form. They can in skin suits, which
Right.
is why they had
That's
to
different.
do something.
Yeah.
Those Watcher angels had to do something which got them in really, really big trouble. They were locked up under chains for 70 generations, which took us to right around 1900, which, surprise, technological revolution. And now the belief in angels and demons has been growing steadily since the 30s or 40s. and the first society that really was an outward demonic government were the Nazis. They were into the occult. You can see it through their symbolism, what the leaders praised, and as now that we have access to so much more information about World War II, not just what ABC or NBC played in the 1970s, because that's all we had when I grew up. Now you can go see the unbelievable reports that they were messing with. Hitler really believed. I believe in his mind. He really believed he was anointed. I mean, we've all heard that he thought he was being led by God. I think something appeared to him and said, "You're gonna run this nation." And so he really believed it, not knowing he was tapped into the very spiritual world we talk about, but the side that's working.
He was just a couple of generals away from taking over Europe. If he would have listened to a couple of the dudes that were much smarter at warfare than he was, we could be talking a whole different thing.
Yeah, look, in the Battle of Britain, he was originally going to invade England, the island of England. The rest of Europe had now been taken over. He started off with Poland on September 1st, 1939. Then he took Austria, then Czech Republic, and then, Czechoslovakia at the time. Then Italy joins, and Spain and France fall. The French in their 2 week. Were we laughing about that? The French 2 weeks Maginot Line gets, flanked.
The French.
And he starts going for England. He doesn't want to fight England, but he knows he needs to get them out because the USA and our production powers linked to England. We were at the time, the Lend-Lease Act, we're sending ships and armaments and all this sort of stuff to England. This was like their line in the sand. And the Battle of Britain was really a battle in the air between the RAF, which is the Royal Air Force, that's the English, the Allies, and the Luftwaffe, which was Germany's Air Force led by Hermann Göring. And Germans didn't have long-range bombers, but they were close enough. They got to a point where there are some reports now that talk about how the RAF, their best fighter plane was the Spitfire. And they really had two that they banked on, the Spitfire and the Hurricane. And at one time, during the Battle of Britain, they had 5 working airplanes. That's it. Facing raids of hundreds of Germans of bombers coming over every day. And then something happened, which I think this is maybe how the spiritual world of the spiritual war plays out. One day, one of those bombers veered off course and actually bombed a London city. Bombing civilians. That concept wasn't as normal then as it is today. The English did the same thing back. And then it got into a personal battle of the bombing of the cities. They stopped attacking the airfields, and that allowed the British to catch up.
To replenish their supply.
And the lowest they ever got was 5 fighters. And Germany said, all right, forget England. This is too much. The Blitz
England's too much. Let's take on Russia.
Right.
Which they almost did, too. So they turn it around, Operation Barbarossa. They start moving east, 3-pronged attack. They get to within a few dozen miles of Moscow. I mean, they almost made it. And they were the Wehrmacht and those SS troops.
They would have made it if the Americans wouldn't have staged D-Day.
Well, by D-Day, this was now in the winter of in 41. They're moving into Russia, and it was, I had said 41 before, but it was 1942 where the horrible, devastating loss for the Germans happened, and that was at Stalingrad, where Hitler, again, he's getting these divine messages. No, keep your army there. I'll make sure you win. Just like the people from the Bible, Hitler believes it. He keeps, I don't know what it was, his 5th division, his 6th division. The general, what was the general's name? I don't remember. He wanted to break him out of there. Hitler said, no, stay and fight, and he lost it all. And from there on, the Russians then started moving back towards Berlin and never retreated again. And they were ultimately, obviously, Germany was crushed, but he definitely overbit. But he came close. He came real close. So lots of tangents here, but at the end of the day, if heaven and hell are real, which I'm going to bet my life on it, Is any debate in your guys' minds whether they're real?
No.
No.
Question.
If they're real, what can possibly be more important? So last week we talked about what science had to say about, in scientists' words, heaven and hell might be part of another dimension, okay? And physicists, scientists, mathematicians, we've discovered 10 dimensions, perhaps an 11th. There's some debate about that. So there are other realms that are out there. We know that. We talked about what the general public believes. Most people intuitively believe in a heaven and hell. I think, Howard, you nailed it when you said about 80% of the public. That's about right. And we went a little bit into what modern-day prophets had to say about it, because another prediction in that Bible was that in incredible numbers people were going to be having visions and dreams about heaven and hell and lots of other things. And you can find them all over the internet. And again, are these people looking for attention? It's not fun attention. There's no money in it. They're not making books or making movies. And even if you do, there's still no money in it. So that's sort of happening. So we were going to talk a little bit about what is actually written in the Bible, this book that has been absolutely accurate about everything all throughout history. What does it carries weight with me. I have faith that the remaining unfulfilled prophecies are all going to happen exactly as we were told they were going to happen. And heaven and hell that is the main theme of the entire book. Babylon and Jerusalem are the earthly metaphors of heaven and hell in our physical world. So it's the main organizing principle of that book, is how to plan for your eternity, how to keep yourself out of the bad place and into the good place. And the captain, that's God, he gave us really some very simple instructions.
So simple that people have a hard time believing that that's all there is. It's like, that's it? Really?
Yeah,
I built the entertainment center from IKEA, and it was way more difficult than that.
Yeah, that's one of the things because I went and probably listened to 100 self-proclaimed prophets on what these people that claim I've been given a tour of heaven and hell. And the people that are in hell, like the amount of suffering going on there, it is nothing you've ever seen, understood, or you just can't understand. We've all put our hand on a stove. Imagine putting it there and keeping it there. Your whole body. That's how much pain you're in constantly. And then assuming what they say about it is true.
It's not
and it dovetails with
not
what
a
the
nice
Bible
place.
said. No, not a nice place.
I would probably choose Ohio over it.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah. Probably.
That's saying
Probably.
That's saying
Definitely would.
But we will. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we will.
When we come back, let's have Kat. Let's have her talk about some passages
and let her do her thing. Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. We are going to discuss our topic today, which is heaven and hell, real proof through the Bible and scientific sources. The next segment we're going to go into is Kat has prepared some stuff to bring biblical proof to add to the scientific proof that David presented us with in our last episode.
Edification.
Oh, yeah. So, you ready, Kat?
Well, yeah. I'm not sure how to start this. I will admit I left my notebook at home. I'm not even going to say that Chewy ate it. It's just sitting on the counter.
Yeah.
Well, you want me to
start out? Go ahead and start.
So
and
I went looking for passages in the Bible that discuss heaven and or hell. And I did focus more on the hell ones. And again, that comes from my place of if you don't realize you're broken, my inner sense tells me that being scared of hell might be the most effective way for you to come to God. But it's not the only way. There's some people that they don't even need to know about hell. They just need to know about heaven and what to do to get in. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all I need to focus on. So this is motivation, but it's like negative sort of motivation. But there are definitely some passages that are both.
Well, a little fear is healthy, you know. Fear of burning your hand keeps us from putting our hand in the fire.
Yeah.
To close out something from last week, because we were talking about dimensions, and someone had asked me, what are the passages that talk about how God, where does he say that there are other dimensions? Where does he say that, particle physics are what ultimately drive the formation of matter? So there are three. Hebrews 11:3 says, Hebrews is a New Testament book. It says, by faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. Now that was written in about 90 AD, between 60 and 90 AD. It would take approximately 2,000 years for us to build microscopes and equipment that can actually go in and observe
the invisible
particle. I mean, we're now down to quarks, which are, subatomic. These are the things that make up a single atom. An atom isn't even. And Dave, you pointed out this incredible characteristic that the smallest particles have, which is they don't have locality until you observe them, or until, meaning and they do not follow any physical law we know of. And God, in his own way, is saying right here, all this stuff you guys see, it's all made by things that are invisible to the human eye, and it's only with special equipment that we would later on find out that, holy cow, you mean a piece of wood isn't really a piece of wood. It's actually a piece of air. Because you take an atom, and the amount of matter in an atom is like almost nothing. What makes the wood appear to be solid is the magnetic field created by the way that the atoms are arranged together. So that was Hebrews 11:3. Colossians 1:16, this is also New Testament, says, for by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. That's God's way of saying all these angels and demons are very real, even if you can't see them. Then Romans 1:20, also a New Testament book, for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. Meaning, if you look at this whole world and see this whole creation, and you believe in your heart that this was because of a random anomaly 15 million years ago, you on that point alone, this was hard for me to get over, because even after I believed in God and Jesus, I still believed evolution for another couple of years until I had the time to actually get in there and study it. There are probably more, but we were really researching them. So I'm going to just do a couple, and then why don't we just talk about them, and we'll just do it.
Even our close, which is Ephesians 5:11 and 13, the full verses have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret, but everything exposed by light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes light. So there's even talk of what is visible and not visible in that.
And there are, if you understand the light spectrum, who was it? The Hubble, there are many lights. We can't see infrared. We can't see ultraviolet unless it's under, and there are many forms of light we cannot observe unless we have, again, special equipment. And a lot of what we know about the building blocks of the world are are outside of the spectrum of our vision, which I find very interesting, because if you're living in 90 AD, I'm thinking a block of cement is a block of cement, which it is a block of cement, but God's already saying, trust me, when you go looking into it, you're going to find out that the little things that make up the block of cement, there's little building blocks in there. They're invisible to you, and I have dominion over the smallest building blocks, and that's where everything comes from. Because if I don't intend for it to be, it's not. So, were you about to say something, Kat?
Oh, well, I was just going to read from Ephesians 6:12. What I have prepared is starting to come back to me. It says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." And I think that also speaks to what you're...
Yeah,
Yeah.
understand, at the end of the day, Satan's not some dude. He's not a one-man army, all right? He has got B with the letter B as in boy, billions of demons working under him. And these are the dominions, the authorities, the powers. Those are the different ranks of
Right. In fact, another translation of that, when you translate it heavenly places, it doesn't really have the effect. If you go back far enough, it actually is realms.
the
Heavenly
realm.
realms, which has a much different...
Right.
The word realm is, for me,
Exactly.
is like an ancient word for dimension, the
Exactly.
heavenly dimensions.
Right.
Something we can't see,
or access.
but is I now believe. Look, we've found it scientifically. And unfortunately, the way our education system is set up, by the time you are of enough stature in science to be where you are observing these particles in their smallest form, understand you may be viewed as some of the smartest people, PhDs in science and astrophysics, but those people have gone through a conventional education longer than anyone, where the bottom line truth, which is not a real truth, but the foregone assumption is that there's no God, so they're always looking for answers outside of God. And it only takes in a lot of cases, but in special cases, obviously, do you get those guys finally going, wait a minute, holy cow, there has to be a God, because there's no way that this balance can exist.
Well, some of them have actually committed suicide over what they found. Because the implications of what they discovered is exactly that.
And look, if you're a
That's
40-year-old,
too much for 'em.
You're a professor at a prestigious university, you've written books, and you're in peer-reviewed journals, and you've had thousands of students, your reputation, and all of a sudden, someone confronts you with, well, I know you keep thinking evolution is how it got here, and, from your little perspective, I see how you fit that into this theory, but you were wrong. Do you know how much it takes for that's... Because if you have pride, you're not going to let go of that.
Imagine if you are the scientist and you discover that, and this is one of my favorite subjects, is that this world is actually a digital representation.
It is.
It's not actually real. That might cause you to eat a bullet if you're not grounded enough. You spent your whole career essentially trying to prove God's not real, because that's, I think, really what they do. To find out that actually he is, and all this things that we see and touch, even our bodies, everything is actually only here because we're looking at it. It goes back to the locality issue.
The most famous evolutionist on the planet. Do we all agree on who this is?
Well, Darwin.
Well, he would be the most
He kinda
famous.
came up with it.
In today,
Dawkins, right?
Richard Dawkins.
Oh, Dawkins, yeah.
And even Richard Dawkins, he can explain everything, but he literally writes essentially the creation of DNA, where that information come from, that remains a real big mystery.
Well, that's the key thing you just said, is they
And
cannot explain the origin of information.
Exactly. And so this guy, for as much as he's studied and for as much as his books are promoted, even in like Family Guy cartoons, and we know where Seth MacFarlane lies on this spectrum.
Without a doubt.
So he's legitimate in everyone's mind, but again, if you're following him, that's a shepherd that will be going off a cliff, no doubt. He's still alive, so he could turn it around. But if you understand the cognitive dissonance in his own head, he's still, as scientific as we think we are, we still don't know the most important part. But he assigns it must be some other form of randomness that we just haven't
Discovered yet. Yeah, technology hasn't gotten to,
But-
and that's maybe pride.
Well, Matthew 13:50. First of all, are heaven and hell real? I absolutely think they are. They are discussed in the Old Testament, certainly in the New. In fact, more is talked about hell in the New Testament than heaven. Jesus talked more about hell than heaven. There are a lot of different confusing names for hell. Gehenna, Sheol, Hades. Those are all places. Hell has, I believe, it sounds like different compartments as well, and some are worse than others. There is a term, Kiver. Now that I do believe is the grave, like a hole in the ground. But I don't think Sheol, Hades, I don't think Gehenna, these are actual places of torment.
Yeah, there's one other word that they use for the deepest, and it's not abyss.
It's the dark abode of woe, but I thought that was Hades.
Where did he lock up the...
Maybe you can look that
I'll
up.
look it
So,
up. I remember the name.
all throughout history, the existence of these places has been thoroughly discussed by all of the writers of the Bible. Some of them weren't even godly men when they were touched by the spiritual realm and began to transcribe, I would say, as like a scribe would, the words given to them. But here again, they're separated by as many as 1,500 years. They lived in different generations. They spoke different languages. They all say the same story, and it goes all the way up through history, including modern day, where you've got, I don't know, thousands maybe that are seemingly getting tours of heaven and hell with the instructions of, go tell my people. They all have a common characteristic, which is they essentially drop everything they do, and they start doing this full time. They tear up when they're talking about it. It's so emotional. They also talk about how real it is, like your senses are heightened. So we were looking at, here's just a few passages. Matthew 13:50. It's a New Testament passage. They're talking about, it says, and they're going to be thrown into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And I can imagine on Judgment Day when Jesus, or however they're going to do this, the angels are going to be involved, by the way, in sorting out this big judicial mess. There will be people placed on Jesus' left. These people will be gnashing their teeth. And they're going to be crying. And can you imagine you've now been sentenced, you're about to go to hell, and you suddenly realize all the people that in your life that had tried to warn you, which had all been touched by God themselves and were trying to get to you, all you need to do was just to listen to one of them, and you could have, that would make me like, oh, I can't believe I did this. That's how I view the gnashing of teeth. Revelation 20:10, this is New Testament, last book written. It says, and the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur. Now, it's interesting they mention sulfur, because everyone that gets one of these tours of heaven and hell, they say the stink is so bad, and that it smells like, if you've ever smelled sulfur, take that and multiply it by 1,000.
It's like a rotten egg.
Like, it's almost
smell.
a deadly smell, but it's... So it's interesting, this is also, that's biblical. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. That's like a lot longer than our human life. Who was the guy? Weiss, W-I-E-S-E, 23 Minutes in Hell. He had, for me, the most compelling story, and I believe him. I believe he really was there. He's just a credible person, and everything he says is right in line with what the Bible talked about. Let's see if I can find something from the Old Testament. Here's Psalms. This is Psalms 37 from 9 to 11. It says, for the evildoers shall be cut off, that is from God. But those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace. And again, the people that view the other side of the heaven-hell tour, heaven, they say they walk in there, they don't even want to come back to earth. They don't want to go back. They're like, this is such a euphoria. You're embraced when you're brought in. It's like there's a party waiting for you. And you feel so good that they typically don't want to go back, in spite of the fact that they have children and wives, and so there's got to be something pretty good. Isaiah 14, verses 15 to 17 says, we talked about the beast was captured. At the end of the day, everyone in the world is going to see Satan as he really is. And everyone's going to look at him and go, this is the dude that got us to fight all these wars against each other and got us to kill ourselves. Like, this little imp is what destroyed billions of souls over history. I'd like to see what that little effort looks like. Isaiah 14, 15 to 17. But you are brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you and ponder over you. Oh, this is the one. Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the word like a desert and overthrew its cities, who did not let his prisoners go home? All right, so we could go. I mean, we could do these. If there's any really interesting ones, I will. I'll spout in with them. But what does that do to you guys? What does it do to you guys emotionally when? And I'm not going to use the word believe because it's pejorative. I'm going to use the word because there's heaven and hell. You know this is real. You know it.
Yeah.
Doesn't it make you a little almost crazy that someone is just unwilling to even open up a book to check it for themselves, knowing what it means? How do you guys deal with that?
I don't know. I've become very patient. Very patient. You just tell them what you understand the truth to be, and then let God do the rest.
Now, do you guys do it because A, you love your fellow man and you don't want to see him there, or do you do it B, because God said once you know this place is real, you essentially need to talk about it if you want to have clean hands in front of me? Because if there's are you doing it to obey God, or are you doing it because you love your fellow man?
Probably both. I think for me, it kind of, I don't, and I know that I probably should, but I don't go around just grabbing people, and it always comes about organically. In a conversation, it's like, well, you might want to consider that maybe there's something else going on here, and then it leads into a conversation from there. But I don't ever go up to someone on the street and go, hey, guy, have you heard about, this? I just don't do that. It's not my thing. But it always just comes up in conversation, and I feel like it's probably a little bit of both. I probably do it in obedience and because I don't want this person to fail, right?
Do you think anywhere on earth there's a 20-year-old person who has never heard of Jesus Christ?
No way. Not this day and age, no way.
I do find it interesting that the one person throughout history that has ever, well, there have been a few, like Jim Jones claimed to be Jesus, and there's some dude in Mexico that think. But I'm talking about that fulfilled the scriptures. The one guy that has fulfilled these scriptures, claiming to be the Son of God, is the most famous human being that has ever lived. Do you think that's an accident?
No.
In fact, this is Isaiah 9:6. There was a guy on the street that did something very cool, but I don't think this was the passage. But I'm going to read this one because this was written hundreds of years before Jesus Christ showed up on the scene. Hundreds of years. One of the many, many predictions about specific to Jesus. Isaiah 9:6. For to us a child is born, which is implying, born out of a human woman. To us a son is given, which some people interpret that in a supernatural way because Mary, hard to get our arms around sometimes, was impregnated essentially by the Holy Spirit or something along those lines. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Who are they talking about in that passage?
Talking about Jesus.
And isn't it weird that a few hundred years later, someone would come that fulfilled that, and 2,000 years later, you can read that even to an atheist. And this is where I don't understand the veil that is in front of some people's eyes, because you can read that, and an atheist will go, "Oh yeah, you're talking about Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
Like, do you know that was written before he showed up? But it's like they don't get it. It's like they don't see how incredible that is.
Yeah.
I have a family member who married a Jewish person, and I was sharing the Word of God with her, and she wanted nothing to do with it. She became very angry and combative towards me, and finally I got up and I walked over to the bookshelf and reached for a Bible, and I opened it to Isaiah 53:5. And I said, I just want to read this one thing to you, and I just want you to tell me who you think I'm talking about. And it says, "But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed." And she goes, "Well, it's Jesus." And I said, "Yeah, you want to know where that came from? Your book, almost 1,000 years before it ever happened." She's still blind. I mean, and if I could speak to the question that Dave answered, I agree with everything that you said with regard to how do you feel about people who don't know him. I have to ask God to keep reminding me that just 3.5 years ago, I was right there. I didn't believe any of it. I had people trying to speak it to me, and praise God, I got sick. I'm grateful I almost died, because it took that for me personally. It took him literally to bring me to my knees. So, and prayer, most powerful thing, and patience, like you said.
Yeah.
But that's how blind, though, people are. And I want to add to that is that the Holy Spirit, I do believe, has to be moving that person in order for our witness to be effective. Otherwise, the person is blind. They're not hearing it. It's not their time yet, perhaps.
Yeah.
I really believe that. So, and that's why, I used to pepper spray everybody with the gospel, hoping it would stick. Now, I wait for the Holy Spirit to go, "See her, you're going to have a conversation," and boom, it always happens. I can't explain it. It's God. It's supernatural.
Yeah, and
I'm not a prophet or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm open to be used, and he knows that. And he uses all of us.
It's like the Holy Spirit, in a sense, is the cipher to the Bible.
Exactly.
You can't understand the deeper meanings without the Holy Spirit. It makes the parables make sense. And we were talking outside, the reason Jesus spoke so much in parables was because for the people that weren't going to believe, it would lessen their punishment on Judgment Day for being ignorant.
Right.
Now, ignorance is still no get out of jail free card, but better to be ignorant than to know the truth and be in denial of it.
And the gospel tells us to those who have been given much, much will be expected.
Yeah, you're under way higher scrutiny. And
it's also interesting to me because in facilitating Bible study for people who aren't sold out yet, a lot of these people that I facilitate Bible study to, they don't believe. They come curious, but they have not made up their mind. And I don't know. To me, I just feel like some of them hear it, and it just, boom, it sticks. They get it. Where I see, and they're all intelligent people. Like, some people will read Scripture, and some of the people will be like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And then others in the group who are just as, secularly intelligent, if not more intelligent, go, you know what, this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. And I read it and go, it's simple. It's right here. But I really do believe that's a spiritual thing.
Right.
I really do.
And it's the opposite of that is also true, is that if it's being blocked, which I believe this can happen, that's clearly demonic in nature. So there's something that has to go on there. And again, obviously I don't know, right? I can't explain it, but maybe hearing that day, and then this person will leave still confused or not caring, just whatever, and 10 years from now, it'll pop back in and go, oh, wait a minute. And then maybe they get it.
Sense.
When that happens.
Yeah, that's a planted seed.
Yeah, when that happens, then that's when, for that individual, in my opinion, there's no turning back from that.
Right. And that's why I don't think it's useful to browbeat people with a Bible. I mean, it's just not.
Well, that's obvious. I personally believe that's demonic too.
Well, and I use a fax machine as an analogy. If I have a fax machine, it can be the best fax machine that ever existed, and I want to get you information. I want to send you a fax. I can fax you every second of every single day. I can do whatever, all the time faxing you. If you don't have a fax machine, you're not going to get anything.
Well, if I have a fax machine and you're sending me that many faxes, I'm unplugging it.
Yeah.
Or that, right?
It's going to take all
I'm going to turn it off. And that's really what goes on,
That's
I think.
a lot of what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For me, I think a lot of it has to do with wanting to be a better person. I always want to be a better person. And I think I have room to grow. And so once I remember how miserable I was in so many aspects before I started to uncover the truth. And so for me, the reason why I witness and I talk to other people and I try to bring the truth to other people is because I remember how great it felt to finally sink my teeth into something that I could truly believe. And so I just I remember what it was like to have no faith. And with no faith, you get no comfort because you believe this is it. This is all there is. There's me. I got to do everything. I have no help. And when I die, I'm done. That's it. That's all I got. But once you gain faith, you understand, you see things with a completely different perspective. And if you're concerned about eternity, if you're concerned about what happens outside of this life and what your life means in the grand scheme of things, once you find out the truth, it's exciting, and I want to share that with people. I want to help ease other people's suffering because I had people who cared enough about me who wanted to ease my suffering. And I mean, and on top of it, it says that's what we're supposed to do. So if this is part of what I got to do, well, I'm going to do it. I can obey orders.
It's the Great Commission.
Yeah, I'm with you. Speaking of the parables and hell, this is from Luke 16:19 to, I don't know, maybe 20 or 21, something like that. So Luke 16:19, it starts. And a lot of people claim that this is a parable. And something occurred to me this week, actually today, and I'll just give you my opinion of why I don't think it is. Now, Chuck Missler is very famous. He just said, and I happen to believe him, he said, if they're using real names, it is not a parable. But let me just read this first. There was a rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed with what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even dogs came out and licked his sores. The poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. That's, heaven or on the way to heaven. I don't want to get into, what the realms of heaven are right now. The rich man also died and was buried, and in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. He was just begging for a drop of water because he was suffering. Now, if that were to be a parable, Jesus would have to be a liar because he says there was a guy named Lazarus. So if there really wasn't a guy named Lazarus, I don't think he would have put a name on him because that would be an untruth. He'd be sort of making something up. All of his other parables,
right? The farmer,
parables, there. He'd say, imagine that there's a man from here and
right.
But here he's using names, so they're.
And to avoid confusion, we're not talking about the Lazarus that he rose,
right.
that rose from the dead.
Yeah, right.
But what's interesting about it is if you look that up, it's actually like Wikipedia for one. The title is The Parable of Lazarus and the Rich Man, which is a dirty trick, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and understand Wikipedia. Wherever we go to get information, dark forces are trying. Yeah. They're doing what they can to destroy it. That's why we always say don't ever trust one source or one person.
But this is this. If you read through the whole, that whole story, not parable, it is interesting. They can communicate, but they can't get to where each other are. And this lens,
you're saying that the rich man who's in hell, he can see heaven.
That's
but
right.
He knows he'll never get there.
And he can remember his family.
Yeah.
And
why don't you tell us what?
Yeah, because he begs, please go tell my brothers that this is real, so that they don't screw up and suffer the same fate as I. Which means he has memory of his family, but that really kind of shows how we tried to explain dimensions. Because there's a separation there. It was far off, but he can still see them. They can communicate with each other, but yet he can't just get up and move over there. He's stuck here, and there's something there. There's a separation there, but yet not. It's abstract, but it does kind of demonstrate that there are these realms that are. They're all right. They could be in the same place, but be very different places. Right? It's hard to even get your mind kind of wrapped around that. But I think it's a very telling. It's become one of my favorite stories.
What's interesting about that story? So you flash forward to all these modern day people that have been shown heaven and hell, and a lot of these folks. In fact, I might even say most of them have no couching in the Bible. Not coaching, but they're not couched in it. They've never read it. They don't know the story.
Ask. Yeah.
The story's the same way. I am the child of atheists, and God, 8-year-old Lithuanian girl, Aniak, whatever her name, Akiana, suddenly she's talking about God and heaven and hell to her parents, and they think she's losing it. And then she starts painting pictures that a professional artist couldn't even paint. Go look them up. Again, we have access to the information. So these people that get these tours all come back with this very common story where I don't think they're just copying this thing in Luke, but every time it seems, or often, when people are taken to hell, they're actually shown people, A, that they knew from their personal life, and or people that have had world fame, both in heaven and in hell. For instance, statistically significant amount of people claim to have seen. These are some of the entertainers that I've heard of. Michael Jackson is in hell.
Where's Elvis? Do you know where Elvis is?
He's at a Burger King in Kalamazoo.
Okay. He's actually still alive.
Now this one shocked me too, because at first this made me want to go, well, what the hell? If John Lennon was another one that they say, a lot of people say they see him in hell, and this one girl said, John Lennon.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
He wanted peace. He was
a communist.
Friendship. He was against war. What's he doing in hell? And while getting the tour, they're like, you're right. He was all those things, but he didn't believe Jesus was the Son of God,
yeah.
and that is the only criteria.
Yeah,
it's not about what you do.
Imagine there's no heaven.
Right.
Imagine if you try.
Yeah.
No borders. He was a weirdo.
So these people, very much like the Luke account we just read, they will see a pastor.
So who's in heaven? Did you know? Did you?
Yeah, famous people in heaven.
Are there any famous people in heaven?
The only two that I can think of right off the top of my head: Richard Pryor.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So the family feud's still
and
going.
Believe it or not, Albert Einstein. I've heard
That's good, too.
I've heard multiples, and I do believe Albert Einstein.
Not surprised.
Again,
see, Richard Pryor got it together.
I love
yeah,
Richard.
there's
He did. He got it together,
as long as
man.
there is breath in your. There's nothing you've done, even if you think it is the vilest thing, dude. Believe me, many people that are in heaven have done much worse. There is no one that has a breath in their mouth that is at this time blocked from heaven. Now that will be the case in the future, very soon. This is after the, we're now in the tribulation, and the beast has everyone accepting a mark, and
We should throw out there that anybody who's keeping score and researching any of the stuff, we found that the other level, we don't know if it's the deepest level, but the other level of hell we're talking about is Abaddon, A-B-B-A-D.
Oh, actually, Tartarus.
Tartarus.
Yeah.
That was the one. Those two more.
It's only used once in the whole book. I think Tartarus is the word.
That's the dark abode of war.
That's where the
like
fallen angels are chained
yes,
for
that
70
is like
generations.
the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Just for our people, the two people who might be listening.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Our 3 listeners.
Well, maybe some people.
No, you guys actually, we hit 1,200 this week.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Really?
Hi, everyone.
Through the YouTube
Okay,
stuff. So,
all right. We'll count it.
And we've only got 5 of those
We'll
episodes
put it on the
up.
same blackboard. Sure.
But
That's the number I'm going with.
All right.
I would like to ask, why do you guys think the rich man ended up in hell?
Because he didn't give the poor man a real meal.
Well, there's probably several reasons.
Well, there's several reasons, but I mean, right there, he could have. I mean, that guy had so much. He totally could have helped the poor
Yep,
guy out, but he
didn't
let
help
him
the
lay
poor.
outside his gate. I mean, that's one of the big things. We're supposed to be helping the poor.
Yeah, he didn't share. He didn't.
He just wanted
But-
what fell off his table. I mean,
That's it.
he even kept that. That's greedy.
That story, I think, is to demonstrate, look, these places are real. And it's not that God is sending you to hell, in a sense. His judgment is more along the lines of, do you want to come into my kingdom? Have you done the just couple simple things? Okay, if you haven't done them, and you went to the lifeboats in the back of the ship, the ones that were all sabotaged.
Yeah, knowingly. Yeah.
Um,
You sent yourself, really.
yeah.
So
you put yourself in the shark tank, and that's the people that run that shark tank are not your friends.
Well, that's all part of the deception. Is that everybody thinks everything is someone else's fault? Ultimately, you're responsible for anything that happens to you.
Yeah.
What
Why
do you
did the we got to answer it. Why did the rich man end up in hell?
I think it was because he didn't believe the law and the prophets. I don't think it had anything to do with whether or not he helped anybody at all. Obviously he
In the
lived for
parable?
himself.
Actually, if you go
Talk about
further
it.
into
But
it, I
it's-
think you're right.
But it says, let's see, it says, then he said, I beg you, therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may testify to them, lest they also come to this place of torment. Abraham said to him, they have Moses and the prophets. Let them hear them. And he said, no, Father Abraham, but if one goes to them from the dead, they will repent. But he said to him, if they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded through one rise from the dead. So, again, you guys, I think it's simple. I think you're...
Well, he wasn't a believer.
Yeah, he wasn't a believer.
Yeah,
He
and they're
didn't
not
believe,
believers.
period.
Right.
I mean, we can't work our way to Jesus Christ. We can't. I'm not saying, again, grace is not a license to sin, but believing on what Jesus said and did is what makes us righteous in the eyes of the Lord.
Yeah,
That's what I
you'll
believe.
do good as a result of that.
Exactly.
If you're wondering, something that seems to work.
Excellent
a
point,
lot of
Kat.
people that end up coming. Yeah, it was a good point. A lot of people that end up figuring this out started off by saying something along the lines of, okay, God, if you're real, Jesus, if you're real, will you let me know? And every time these people say it, and he let me know in his own. I'm not saying he's going to come down with lightning bolts in your bedroom and juggle for you and go, hey, I'm
Burning
real.
bush.
But he does do that for some, I don't know about the juggling part.
Maybe.
But he will let you know
Well, I'm sure
in
he
other
could.
ways.
He invented juggling.
Yeah, could juggle without moving his hands.
So-
I've even had people that have had physical things, not visual. Physical things actually manifest as a result of asking that very question.
Yeah.
You're sitting next to one of them.
I mean, the actual things, yeah.
Yeah.
Not,
Like-
I mean, like feeling things at that moment.
Yeah, we had a friend that when he was at his lowest point, he went out and sat down on his porch. He'd lost
That's exactly
everything.
the story I'm thinking of.
He had lost everything, and
the guy that was baptized this
Yeah.
weekend?
and he said, are you real? Show me you're real.
Well, I need you. I can't do this
I
myself.
can't do this by myself. And he says, and I believe him,
Oh, without a doubt, 100%.
he said he felt an arm around his shoulder, and it was so real, he turned around to see if someone was behind
He
him.
thought it was his neighbor.
Yeah, he thought it was his neighbor.
Thought it was his neighbor. And I'm telling you, I know this guy. I've known
Yeah.
him 20
Yeah.
years. And
No, he's not making
more
I
than
don't-
20 years.
I do
Yeah.
not believe that he believes it. I just believe him.
No.
And I think
no.
he really... there
It
was some-
happened to him.
Oh, absolutely
totally
that.
believe
Too
too.
many people talk about it, and it just turns you into a local
Look,
weirdo.
I know-
if you do. You're not going to do it unless it really happens.
I know him really, really well, and he just got baptized in front of about 100 people at my
Yeah.
parents' house in the lake. So that you don't do something like that unless you really mean it,
Yep.
because
So-
that's a huge deal.
Here are a few other things that are interesting. This is now from... So one of the things that... And this dovetails with the people that get the tours of heaven and hell. All the people that are there are always saying, you got to warn my family. You got to tell my kids this place is real. You've got to get... I mean, you can't... They don't know. They don't know. That's actually something that people in hell feel. So there's still some emotion. I mean, actually more emotion, but they had enough sense to do that. Here's another one that's also... I just found a Bible verse for it, because they all talk about how you do have your body down there, and I don't get how this works, but just so many people have said this that I tend to believe something along this is true, but there's so many horrible things down there, like everything from your worst fears, from giant spiders to giant snakes that literally will eat a hole in your body and just start crawling through it. And then there are bugs and cockroaches and they'll devour your skin, and then your skin regenerates, and then it happens again. And it just goes on forever and ever and ever. And that was one... I can't tell you how many people that have been given tours of hell said that I just saw them being eaten by everything from giant bugs to demons. There's apparently some, like, quote-unquote sports arenas down there where, the demons hate us. They'll rip off a dude's arm, and it feels more painful than if we were to rip it off today. And they'll throw it and tell, go get your arm over there. And that's, they go get their arm because they have to do whatever they're told, because you have no power down there. You're up against things that are a lot stronger and smarter than you are and bigger. And it's just over and over. That's played out over.
Yeah.
And they feel that pain over. So Mark 9:48, I think is talking about this, but there's this little piece that says, basically in hell, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. That's another thing they say, is that people literally, they're on fire and they feel the pain of being on fire, and they never can get out of it. Their skin all burns away, then apparently it regenerates, and it happens again and again forever.
Ever and ever.
Could you imagine having to do
Forever
that for
wasn't long enough.
one day? Could you imagine having to do that for one day, much less...
Dude, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I know
how
pain,
long can
and I'll
keep
tell you.
a lighter under your... Unless you're G. Gordon Liddy, you
Long
can't...
enough to make a scar like that.
Yeah, dude. Can you imagine feeling that head to toe and
Yeah,
knowing
no.
that I'll never... Like, where are you going to get the strength to escape?
Yeah, and the
No
shock
way.
the shock won't kill you like it would, here.
You know how we say there are there are no coincidences. None of us believe in coincidences. I think it is no coincidence that the show that comes up after us is a comedy hour, because I think you need a little bit of
Maybe a little.
what these guys bring after.
There is good news, however.
Yeah,
It's not all bad news.
Yeah,
So-
dude. We're not telling you about the place we're going. We're telling you, understand so you can avoid this place, because it's so simple. And
Exactly.
even if you don't believe, even if you're not there, run a risk-reward analysis on it. Can you really? How much time have you spent on your 401k, or where you're going on vacation next year?
There's got to be software out there that can crunch the numbers for you.
There are so many ways to figure this out. Why take the chance? Because if we're wrong,
So what?
Nothing.
who gives?
Right.
Now this is not why we do this, of
No,
course,
We're all
but
in the dirt.
if you want to do counterintuitive argument, if we're wrong, so what?
What are we out?
But if you're wrong,
Yep.
do you understand? Your whole existence just was wasted in the most tragic way possible, and you've put yourself into your enemy's hands in a place where you will never, ever, ever be able to escape. So I don't mean to scare you guys. No, actually, I'm wrong this week. I do.
Yeah.
We will certainly talk about the glories of heaven and the positive side of this. Truth is sometimes hard to deal with, but whatever your motivation, we at the end of the day, look into it so you don't have to suffer through this stuff. Are we getting close to wrap up?
Yeah,
Where
a
are
couple
we?
minutes, about 2 minutes.
Do you guys want to do another one of these?
We can do one more.
Now, here's an Old Testament. So we just heard Luke. That was New Testament. Here's an Old Testament. This is Isaiah 66:24, echoing the same thing that I've seen. Just literally everyone that gets a tour of hell claims this about the worms that don't die. They enter your ears and your mouth and your just your worst fears, and they eat you from the inside out. But it was said in Isaiah 66:24, and they shall go out and look on the dead bodies of the men who have rebelled against me, for their worm shall not die, their fire shall not be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence to all flesh. Yikes.
That doesn't sound good.
You know, I think that it sounds like, you know, this punishment is so harsh, and it is, but I think it's because the way to heaven is
Exactly.
simple. It's simple.
Yeah, but I've often wondered that. Not so much anymore, because I started looking at heaven like I'm the CEO of my company. And I might advertise on Monster.com for the whole world. You know, anyone can get a job at my business, especially like if it's, let's say, you know, hypothetical, like if it's an all-commission position. And if I say you need to wear a tie and have a cover letter when you come to your interview, I've met a lot of great people that couldn't follow that simple. And it's already like they're not going to get hired, even if they do the other things well, because it's a sign that you're not really into this. You're not really for us. And if I'm the CEO of heaven, you know, if I'm God and I'm running a just, pristine place, it's a clean room. There's no sin up there. There's no... And the only way to get in there is to essentially get sprayed down by, you know, the antidote Jesus gave us. But if you show up without having, you know, not having gotten sprayed down, you're not getting into that clean room. So I started looking at it like that, because one of the questions I get is, if God's a just God, how the heck can he let anyone go to that place? And I'll leave that out there for you guys to answer right now. And maybe we can close with that. But
Well, it's the nature of who you're sinning against. It's so heinous that is just. How could he be just if he allows that in heaven?
Right.
okay, fine.
If he's got all these people that have followed the rules and done exactly what he says, if you don't follow the rules and you get in, how's that just to everybody else who did it the way he wanted them to?
Wouldn't it be more just to just exterminate their soul and not let them suffer? Just go, all right, you don't get into heaven, but everything goes dark for you.
Well, maybe
sorry.
in our minds. You know,
Yeah.
maybe in our minds,
But
yeah.
his thoughts
but
are not our thoughts.
Can I leave with like Romans 10:9? If you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus, you know, died and rose from the dead, you're saved.
Yeah, I do want to
Amen.
remind people what is the core message, the most simple thing.
Start there. And I mean, you're either saved or you're not. There's no kind of saved,
Yeah.
I don't think, right? I mean, you're either saved or you're not. You either believe what it says in Romans 10:9 or you don't. Period.
Excellent point. On that note, this has been Down the Rabbit Hole. We'll see you next week.